What happens when Hollywood's most dedicated action star sits down for what should be a routine promotional interview only to find himself face to face with a host who seems determined to destroy his decades-long career on live television? What unfolds is a clash so explosive, so personal that it leaves an entire studio audience speechless, and ends with one of cinema's biggest megastars storming off the set in a rage that no one saw coming. This is the story of Tom Cruise's catastrophic appearance on The View and how Whoopi Goldberg turned what should have been a mission, impossible promotional interview into a personal vendetta that shocked the entertainment world. Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling us what you think really pushed Tom over the edge. Now, let's get into it. The morning started like any other at the View Studios in New York City. Tom Cruise had flown in specifically for this interview to promote his latest mission, Impossible Film, a project that marked another death-defying chapter in his legendary action career after months of performing stunts that had pushed the boundaries of what was thought possible in cinema. His publicist had specifically requested The View because they wanted a platform that would allow Tom to showcase his infamous intensity and unwavering dedication to his craft, his passion for authentic filmmaking, and his commitment to giving audiences the most thrilling experience possible. What they got was something entirely different. Whoopi Goldberg had been having what her staff diplomatically called one of her most confrontational days. She had arrived at the studio that morning already primed for battle, dismissing makeup artists with sharp comments and snapping at production assistants over minor details that would normally go unnoticed. Several crew members later admitted they had never seen her quite so loaded for bear before a show, her usual professional demeanor replaced by something that felt almost predatory. Some speculated it stemmed from recent criticism of her own projects that had been circulating in the entertainment press, while others whispered about her growing frustration with Hollywood's so-called untouchable elite and their ability to control narratives. Whatever the cause, Whoopi was primed for confrontation, and Tom Cruise was about to walk directly into her crosshairs. When Tom arrived at the studio, he was his usual high-energy self, greeting everyone from the security guards to the catering staff with his trademark million-dollar smile and that infectious enthusiasm that had made him one of the most beloved stars in Hollywood for over 4 decades. He spent time demonstrating some of his latest stunts to the other hosts, sharing behind-the-scenes stories about hanging off planes at 5,000 feet and scaling the world's tallest buildings with nothing but a harness and his own determination. Joy Behar later described him as absolutely electrifying and one of the most passionate guests we've ever had, mentioning how his eyes literally lit up when he talked about his craft. Sarah Haynes mentioned how he complimented the crew's professionalism and shared detailed stories about his commitment to doing his own stunts, even going so far as to show them videos on his phone of some of the more dangerous sequences from his upcoming film. Even the typically reserved Sunny Hostin was seen laughing at his stories about accidentally crashing helicopters and learning to hold his breath underwater for 6 minutes. Tom was in his element, radiating the kind of genuine excitement and passion that reminded everyone why he had remained at the top of his profession for so long. But Whoopi remained noticeably cold during the pre-show interactions, her arms crossed and her expression unreadable. While the other hosts were clearly energized by Tom's presence and feeding off his contagious enthusiasm, she sat at her spot reviewing her notes with an intensity that made everyone around her uncomfortable. When a producer approached to discuss the interview format and suggested some lighter questions about his stunt work, she waved them away dismissively, muttering something about not being fooled by Hollywood charm and getting to the real issues. The contrast between Tom's warmth and Whoopi's iciness was so stark that several crew members exchanged worried glances, sensing that something was brewing beneath the surface. The show's opening went smoothly enough, with the hosts discussing the day's hot topics with their usual mix of humor and heated debate, but there was an underlying tension in the air that regular viewers might have picked up on. Whoopi seemed more combative than usual, even with her co-hosts, interrupting them more frequently and dismissing their opinions with barely concealed irritation. When it came time to introduce Tom Cruise, the other hosts were genuinely excited, their energy palpable as they prepared to welcome one of Hollywood's biggest stars. Joy's introduction was warm and enthusiastic, highlighting his incredible career spanning over 4 decades and his reputation as the most dedicated action star of his generation. She mentioned his iconic roles from Top Gun to Mission Impossible, his fearless commitment to performing death-defying stunts, and his upcoming film that promised to push the boundaries of action cinema even further. The audience applauded enthusiastically as Tom walked out, flashing his famous megawatt smile and giving that characteristic Tom Cruise wave that had charmed audiences worldwide. He settled into the guest chair with his trademark confident energy, leaning forward slightly with his hands clasped, wearing a perfectly tailored black suit that somehow managed to look both casual and impossibly expensive. His hair was perfectly styled, and he looked relaxed and genuinely excited to be there, ready for what he assumed would be an entertaining conversation about his latest impossible stunts and the craft he loved so much. "Tom Cruise, everyone," Joy said with genuine warmth and admiration. "Thank you so much for being here. We are absolutely huge fans of everything you do." "The pleasure is entirely mine," Tom replied, his voice carrying that familiar intensity and passion that had captivated audiences for decades. "I've always respected what you ladies do here. The courage it takes to tackle important subjects day after day, to have real conversations about things that matter. That's what great television is all about." Sarah Haynes jumped in with the first question, her voice filled with genuine curiosity and excitement. "Tom, we have to talk about these incredible stunts you keep doing. At 62, you're still hanging off cliffs and flying helicopters. What drives you to keep pushing these physical limits?" Tom's face immediately lit up with that famous intensity, his eyes sparkling as he leaned forward in his chair. "You know, Sarah, it's all about authenticity for the audience. When people go to see a Mission Impossible film, they deserve the real thing. They deserve to know that what they're seeing on screen actually happened, that we pushed ourselves to create something genuinely spectacular for them." He gestured enthusiastically with his hands, his passion infectious. "Every stunt, every sequence, we approach it with the mindset of, how can we make this bigger, better, more incredible than anything we've done before? It's not about the danger. It's about the craft, about giving audiences an experience they'll never forget." The audience was hanging on every word, completely captivated by his enthusiasm. This was the Tom Cruise they remembered and loved, passionate, dedicated, and absolutely magnetic when talking about his work. "The preparation is everything," he continued, his voice gaining momentum. "For the helicopter sequence in the new film, I spent months learning to fly, working with the best pilots in the world, understanding every mechanical aspect of the aircraft. Because when you're up there at 2,000 feet, there's no room for error. But that's what makes it real. That's what makes it special." Sonny Hostin nodded appreciatively, clearly moved by his dedication. "It sounds like this level of commitment goes beyond just making movies. Was there something that sparked this philosophy for you early in your career?" Tom paused thoughtfully, clearly considering how much of himself to reveal. "I think it comes from a deep respect for the audience and for the art form itself. People work hard for their money. They choose to spend their evening with us in a theater, and we owe them nothing less than our absolute best. Whether that's spending 6 months learning a new skill or doing a stunt 20 times until it's perfect, that's just the job. That's what separates good from extraordinary." The other hosts were clearly engaged and impressed, and the interview was developing into exactly the kind of meaningful, inspiring conversation that showcased Tom at his best. But then Whoopi spoke for the first time since the introduction, and her voice cut through the studio atmosphere like a knife. "That's a very inspiring narrative," Whoopi said, her voice cutting through the studio like a blade, instantly changing the entire atmosphere in the room. The temperature seemed to drop by 10 degrees as her words hung in the air. "But let's talk about what really drives this obsessive behavior of yours, Tom. Is it dedication to craft? Or is it something else entirely? Something more controlling?" The other hosts froze, their smiles fading instantly. This was not part of the planned interview questions, and everyone could feel the sudden shift from celebration to confrontation. Tom's expression changed slightly, his eyebrows raising in surprise, but he maintained his composure with the practiced ease of someone who had handled difficult press for decades. "I'm not sure I understand what you're getting at, Whoopi. I think passion for excellence is something to be celebrated, not questioned." "Oh, but I think we should question it," Whoopi pressed, leaning forward aggressively, her eyes narrowing. "Because this level of control, this obsession with perfection, it affects everyone around you, doesn't it? Your co-stars, your crew members, your personal relationships. How many people have suffered because of your need to control every single detail?" The studio audience was completely silent now, sensing that something had gone terribly wrong. You could feel the discomfort radiating from everyone present as the interview took this sudden, hostile turn. Joy tried to jump in with a redirect, her voice nervous. "Maybe we could talk about the actual filmmaking process, but Whoopi held up her hand dismissively, cutting Joy off mid-sentence.
"No, Joy.
"I think it's time someone asked the real questions here. Tom, you've been in this business for over 40 years, and there's a pattern of behavior that people in Hollywood whisper about but are too afraid to address publicly. The intense control, the demanding perfectionism. Where does that really come from?" Tom took a deep breath, his jaw tightening slightly as he fought to maintain his professional demeanor. "Whoopi, I came here to talk about my work, about a film that my entire team and I are incredibly proud of. If you want to have a conversation about filmmaking, about craft, about the art we create together, I'm happy to do that. But I'm not going to sit here and be ambushed with personal attacks disguised as journalism." "Ambushed?" Whoopi laughed, but there was no humor in it whatsoever. The sound was harsh and cold, echoing through the stunned studio. "This is called accountability, Tom. Something that people in your positions seem to have forgotten exists. You want to come on television and sell us this perfect image of dedication and craft, but you don't want to address the elephant in the room, your involvement with Scientology and how that influences every aspect of your life and career." The mention of Scientology sent a visible shock through Tom's entire body. His famous smile disappeared completely, replaced by a look of barely controlled anger. The other hosts looked absolutely horrified. This was crossing every line of professional conduct, and everyone in the studio knew it. "My personal beliefs are exactly that, personal," Tom said, his voice steady, but with an edge that hadn't been there before. "And they have nothing to do with my work as an actor, or the film we're here to discuss today." "Oh, but they have everything to do with it," Whoopi shot back, her voice rising. "When your belief system demands that level of control, that level of perfectionism, it affects everyone around you. How many co-stars have we heard whisper about your demanding behavior on set? How many relationships have been destroyed by your need to control every aspect of your life?" Sarah Haynes actually shifted uncomfortably in her chair, clearly wanting to intervene, but not knowing how. "Whoopi, I really think we should move on to Dash." "No, Sarah," Whoopi snapped, turning on her with surprising venom. "This is my show, and I will ask the questions that need to be asked. Tom, let's talk about your marriages. 3 divorces. A pattern of relationships that end when women refuse to be controlled. Is that just coincidence? The brutality of that moment was stunning. The audience audibly gasped, and Sunny Hostin looked like she might actually stand up and walk off the set herself. This had gone far beyond uncomfortable television. This was becoming genuinely vicious. Tom's hands clenched into fists on his lap, his knuckles white with tension. When he spoke, his voice was dangerously quiet. How dare you bring my family into this? How dare you sit there and make assumptions about my personal relationships based on tabloid gossip and your own prejudices? Prejudices? Whoopi fired back. I'm stating facts. Public record. Court documents. Or are you going to tell me that your ex-wives are all lying too? The tension in the studio was becoming absolutely unbearable. Tom stood up slowly, his movements deliberate and controlled despite the obvious fury building inside him. The studio lights cast sharp shadows across his face, making his expression look even more intense than usual. I think we need to stop this right now, Tom said, his voice carrying that dangerous, quiet intensity that anyone who knew him recognized as a warning sign. I came here as a guest, with respect for this show and for you personally, Whoopi. But respect is supposed to be a two-way street. Whoopi leaned back in her chair with a smirk that sent chills through everyone watching. Oh, now you want to talk about respect? That's rich coming from someone who has shown so little respect to the people in his own life. Tell me, Tom, how many people have had to sign non-disclosure agreements just to work with you? How many people have been forced to participate in your belief system just to keep their jobs? Joy desperately tried to regain control of the situation, her voice shaking with anxiety. Maybe we should talk about the actual movie, she interjected, looking directly at the camera as if pleading with the audience to understand this wasn't planned. Tom, can you tell us about working with the director on this latest Mission Impossible? But Whoopi was not finished. She turned to Joy with a look that could have frozen fire.
No, Joy.
We're going to finish this conversation. I'm tired of celebrities coming on this show thinking they can control the narrative and avoid the hard questions. This isn't some entertainment magazine puff piece where we just smile and nod while they sell us their sanitized version of reality. Tom slowly sat back down, but his posture was completely different now. Where before he had been relaxed and open, he was now coiled like a spring ready to snap. His famous charm had evaporated entirely, replaced by something much more dangerous. You know what, Whoopi? You're absolutely right about one thing. This isn't a puff piece. This is something much worse. This is a deliberate character assassination, and you're using your platform to spread lies and innuendo about my personal life, my beliefs, and my relationships. Character assassination? Whoopi laughed harshly. I'm asking you legitimate questions that any real journalist would ask. If you can't handle the truth about your own life being discussed publicly, maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews at all. Truth, Tom repeated, his voice rising for the first time, that famous intensity finally breaking through his professional facade. You want to talk about truth? The truth is that you have done nothing but attack me personally from the moment I sat down. You haven't asked me a single question about my work, about my craft, about the things that actually matter. You've done nothing but spread gossip and innuendo disguised as journalism. That's not truth. That's tabloid sensationalism. The word, tabloid, hung in the air like a thunderclap. Whoopi's expression darkened immediately, and you could see the fury building behind her eyes like a gathering storm. Did you just call me a tabloid journalist? She said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Me? I've been asking the hard questions for 40 years. I've been holding people accountable since before you were hanging off buildings for applause. Accountable for what? Tom fired back, his legendary composure finally cracking completely as he leaned forward in his chair. For dedicating my life to my craft? For working harder than anyone else in this business? For believing in something bigger than myself? What exactly am I supposed to be accountable for, Whoopi? For the people you've hurt? Whoopi shouted, slamming her hand on the desk so hard it made everyone jump. For the lives you've disrupted with your obsessive need for control. For the way your cult-like behavior has affected everyone around you, including your own children. The moment she mentioned his children, something fundamental snapped inside Tom Cruise. His face went completely white, then flushed red with an anger that was terrifying to witness. Several members of the audience actually leaned back in their seats, as if trying to distance themselves from the explosion they could feel coming. "That's enough," Tom roared, shooting to his feet so violently that his chair rolled backward and nearly tipped over. "You have no right to bring my children into this. You have no idea what you're talking about. You sit there behind your desk throwing around accusations and lies, but you know nothing about my life, nothing about my family, and nothing about what I've sacrificed for my career." The studio fell into complete, stunned silence. This was Tom Cruise, controlled, professional, charming Tom Cruise, completely losing it on live television. Whoopi stared at him for a moment, perhaps finally realizing she had pushed too far, but instead of backing down, she doubled down with a viciousness that shocked even her harshest critics. "Don't you dare lecture me about sacrifice," Whoopi hissed, standing up to match his energy, her voice dripping with venom. "Don't you dare stand there and play the victim when you've built your entire career on manipulation and control. Your children, your ex-wives, your coworkers, they've all paid the price for your obsessions, and now you want to throw a tantrum because someone finally called you out on it." Tom was shaking now, his hands clenched into fists at his sides, his famous smile nowhere to be found. "You know what the real tragedy is here, Whoopi? I used to respect you. I used to admire your work, your courage, your willingness to speak truth to power. But what you're doing right now isn't truth. It isn't courage. It's just cruelty for the sake of cruelty." The words hit Whoopi like a physical blow, and for just a moment, her mask slipped and you could see something almost vulnerable in her expression. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by an even harder edge. "Don't you dare try to turn this around on me," she shot back. "Don't you dare sit there and try to make me the villain in your story. I'm not the one who needs to answer for decades of controlling behavior. I'm not the one whose belief system has torn families apart. My belief system?" Tom's voice was rising to a dangerous level now. "What about your belief system, Whoopi? What about your belief that you have the right to destroy someone on live television? What about your belief that you can say whatever you want about people's families, their children, their personal lives, just because you have a platform?" The other hosts were now actively trying to intervene, but both Tom and Whoopi were locked in their confrontation, seemingly oblivious to everything else happening around them. The audience was watching in horrified fascination as two titans of entertainment tore each other apart on live television. "I've had enough of this," Tom said, his voice gaining a finality that made everyone in the studio nervous. "I came here in good faith to talk about my work, to share something I'm passionate about with people who I thought would appreciate it. Instead, you've turned this into a personal attack, a character assassination, and I will not stand here and take it anymore." Whoopi leaned forward with a smirk that was pure poison. "Then leave," she said simply. "If you can't handle real questions about your real life, then get out. Security can escort you if necessary."